I really feel that I benefited from being part of this group that was sponsored by the Veterans Art Project. And, I got to meet some other artists, fellow artists here, and we just kind of feed off each other. It's like being in any kind of a studio setting. I think it's great when you can see what other people are doing and kind of pick ideas from them and have them give you feedback on your work as well. What I feel that art gives to me as a person is it just fulfills my creativity. I'm not a person who can sit and do nothing, so I always need to be creating, whether I'm crocheting a hat or sitting at a potter's wheel or painting a painting or even taking photography. I will pull off the road and take pictures all the time. So I just feel a need to create all the time.
What I really like about art is the way that each individual, each human can interpret the same scene in many different ways. And to have the ability to put that onto some medium where other people can see it and see what they see. I think it really creates a new version of what the scenes that the same people are seeing.
This one is still very much a work in progress. This was our equalization project. Leaves are basically the same size and shape, but they're not really. They have slightly different sizes, slightly different shapes. There are different angles to the viewer, things like that. This is a picture I took of in my backyard. We had planted a bush designed to hopefully attract butterflies. It actually did, and that's why I took the picture. There's in my photo, there's a butterfly right here in the middle. Carol and I decided that leaving that out would be fine because that kind of takes away from the equalization aspect of it by having a big orange insect in the middle of your flowers. So I still need to work on it a bit, but I like the way it's coming along, learning new colors. Purples and greens are apparently some of the hardest to mix, so I, of course, didn't know that until after I started, but that's the way it works sometimes.
It's been interesting because as I share what I've done with Carol, there's always something to learn. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Even in our mistakes, we find out what we've done right and what we've done wrong. So this one, which I call Into Uncertainty, is actually the first painting I did in class as far as a project or a lesson. I like the starkness of the black and the white, and I surprised myself. This is truly one that I didn't think I would. I know before the class I would not have been able to pull this off. It's based on a photograph that I saw, and I just thought that it was sort of eye-catching, and in terms of using just black and white, I figured I'd give it a go. I think it turned out all right.
Thinking that I did of hollyhocks, which I just love those flowers. And I took this photo when I was down in Santa Fe. They seem to grow really well in New Mexico. And I just love doing the painting of this one. What I love about art is I've always been drawn to it since I was a small child. So I colored a lot, I painted watercolors, I started doing clay when I was probably in junior high school, and I've really touched on a lot of the mediums out there, so it's just fulfilling a creative need in me.
One of the things that I recognized early on in this class is it's a lot like cooking in terms of paints or their ingredients. It's a feel, it's a touch, it's a texture. Even as much as Carol continually has to tell me, more paint, Sarge. It's also an interesting exercise in the translation between brain to brush, which is kind of like a picture of a recipe you then translate into painting.
What I've learned in this class is really going to help me continue taking images that I see that I capture with the cameras, or just watching sunsets and sunrises and traveling and capturing different images. It's really going to help me keep those and pass them on to other people. And as I feel that I get better, as I understand it, get better at actually projecting that image with the right colors and the right tones and colors and shadows, I feel more confident that I can pass on some of the things that I see in nature on to others. on canvas.
And this was supposed to be no sharp shadows. It was kind of an overcast day, so I found a winterscape. Most of us found winterscapes actually. And I liked this one because of the different colors and the shapes in the planking on the cabin, but then also the challenge of having a pathway in snow, which you think is all one color until you start to look at it and try to paint it and realize it is not one color. So you get some grays and blues in there, and then having to fade into the trees in the background, it just made it an interesting challenge, but at the same time it was a simple concept, so that's why I like that one. Another one she asked us to bring in was one with shadows. Big challenge, turning a 3D object into a 2D painting that looks like a 3D object. This one also helped me with the concept of complementary colors and shapes and shadows and whatnot. I originally had done this shadow on this candle as a gray, thinking all shadows are basically black. Well, then I realized, again, looking at my source picture, that it was actually more of a brown, because that's the complementary color for this, over this color, the color of my actual candle.
I want to talk about this one because it's pretty much an accident. And one of the things I learned in the class is that if you get going and you seem to get to the point of no return, you can always label it abstract, but then you have to explain what's going on in the painting. This particular one, it started out that I was going to paint some, I had quite a lot of paint left over from mixing, and I wanted to start painting some trees or a forest. So once I got going, I found I had the effect by thinning and doing a couple of other things. So I've labeled this forest or fire mixing.
Where do I see myself on my journey? I've learned to not be afraid, honestly. My mom does watercolors. She's done them forever. As long as I can remember, she's done a great job, but I was always scared because watercolors are different. You know, you make one little oops and you have to start all over. Oil is much more forgiving, it's much more flexible. You can keep playing with it until you get the picture you're looking for, and then it pops, and then you just have to learn to go, okay, that's it, I'm done, and step away from it. And that's where I've learned to not be afraid.
I liked many things about doing this class. I learned early on that the instructor kept taking away the excuses that I had for not painting. I learned about mixing paints and trying to find the colors to match what I was actually seeing. That was one of the most difficult and the most rewarding parts of it. What I really liked about the class also was to finally being able to put a brush to the canvas without having the fear of just not producing anything. And it got me over the anxiety of at least trying to express myself with oils.
My favorite part of this class was the assignments that we're giving, like using local color or things with shadows or doing a still life. So when you're given a project, then you don't really have to think so hard about what am I going to paint, but just finding a setup that you can work on. So that's what I've done here. I've used all of my own photography too to create the paintings that I've done here.
My expectations for coming into the class, to be completely shallow and selfish and whatnot, is I eventually intend to build a model railroad, and I wanted to learn how to paint backdrops. So I see stuff in magazines all the time where people do fantastic jobs, and they talk about airbrushing and watercolors and this and that and this and that and the other. I decided, let's try to learn something, because I really have never painted before, so I want to give it a shot.
What is this? This was not part of a class project, although at the time we were discussing color and color mixing. This came from a photograph, and I don't recall the exact place, but it's a photograph looking up into stained glass that spirals up into a dome. So I decided to give that a go.
We spent the better part of a morning actually putting these actual colors in and then tinting them with white. As you go across here, it's the different combinations of the colors, these specific colors, and then there's, with the tints, there's more and more white added. And you can see that this is a color wheel that comes with the, came with the tablets. This is the rest of the colors that we did, and I refer to this all the time when I want to try to create a color in such, for example, one of the purples in the sunset. In whatever painting I'm doing, I try to get as close to the color that I'm looking for, and then I know that I can tint it. And this has been extremely valuable in learning how to mix paints.
What did I get out of the class? I'm still getting stuff out of this class, and I suspect I'll be getting something out of this class for the rest of my life. The first thing is that I'm pretty much stick figure painting guy. So the experience of being able to do some of the paintings that I've done, I've surprised even myself at this point. And then I would say that the next thing is the fact that I can do it, because without this class, I don't think I would have ever attempted to just take up a brush and start painting.
Being in this class was far better than trying out on my own. I've tried several times with pencil drawings and colored pencils and even watercolors to do this, but the organization and the understanding wasn't there until I came to this class. And this class allowed me, with the instructor's help and reading and then practicing, to really start to get a grasp of how important the colors and the tones and the hues and the darks and the lights were important to getting the actual image across.
I've done about 6 of these, and this is what I settled on in terms of the first ones. I did the stones. I didn't really like the background, and as I've learned and observed and seen some of Carol's paintings and how she describes the backgrounds and every shape or object to make them interesting, and I think I did a reasonably decent job on this one. I was pretty happy with this is sort of the final one, and my daughter saw a picture of this and had asked I paint her one, so I've done that, and she was the first one who asked for one of my paintings, which was all I wanted out of this class.
How have I benefited from the class, and what are my intentions? Well, actually my wife suggested I take the class as a method of dealing with stress. I grew up as a musician, and on Saturday mornings, the rest of the family gets a little annoyed if you start playing a tuba. So painting is a lot quieter. So I definitely see myself going forward with this. I took advantage of some sales over the past couple of months, and I have a lot of blank canvas at home, plan to use. Learning a lot about quality of paints, which paints I use the most. There are some colors I have yet to touch in this class. There are some colors that I've had to go out and buy some refills. So I definitely see this as a way forward, and I'm looking forward to doing more stuff, different challenges, different ideas, different concepts.
Values in, and then they started working smaller and smaller shapes and lighter. And these are made with a long, loose brush. Do you have one, a long, loose brush? So it's just very simply
Sure.
shaped in.
Simply.
You can do it.